Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast. Hello and welcome to another edition of Musical Talk. I'm Thos Ribbits, and I'm so stupid that I think the name Mimi is the opposite of the letter W. You may have to think about that one for a while, but not too long, I hope, because I'm going to carry on. Not tremendously good a joke, I fear, to start an episode, but it does allow me to make this observation. That was a joke based around me and you, but there's always been a question as to whether it's me and you or you and I. Which is correct, which is not. Perhaps both are, perhaps both are not. This is not an English lesson, so we're not going to investigate that today. But what we are going to investigate is my favourite show from the Edinburgh Festival Fringe 2019. It was the Musical Talk Pick of the Fringe, and I loved it. What was it called? Well, I've already said it. It was called You and I by Cordelia O'Driscoll and Tom Williams. And if those names sound familiar to you, they should. And the reason for that is because they are two of the people behind Colla Voce Theatre. And Colla Voce Theatre has already had an enormous hit with one of their previous works, Buried. Buried the musical, which was a great hit at Edinburgh and elsewhere for a couple of years, and even made it to Broadway last spring in 2019. Well, hot on the heels of their success in America, they then came to the Edinburgh Festival Fringe in the summer of 2019 with their brand new show, You and I, with its catchy slogan, love, loss, and a robot called Robert. Now, as they were the first to admit, it was a show still in progress, and I suspect future iterations of it will make it smoother and better. But my word, it was brilliant as it was, so I can only look forward to those further productions with anticipation. But what's it about? Well, You and I follows the story of Fran, who lives a relatively isolated life until her sister's latest experiment, an AI called Robert the Robot, turns up at her house. And as they like to say, with hilarious consequences. But do you know what? Also touching consequences. It was a great all-rounder. It was touching, it was funny, and I loved every second of it. And so it was my delight to catch up again with those two wonderful people. They're both wonderful in their own right because they are nice and also tremendously talented. That's Cordelia O'Driscoll, who was the composer, the lyricist and the musical director in the production I saw, and Tom Williams, who wrote the book. I spoke to them before a few years ago here on Musical Talk for Buried, and it was a delight to catch up with them again, hot on the heels of their American success and what was their Edinburgh success. So, let's hear from Tom Williams and Cordelia O'Driscoll about You and I. Musical Talk, the UK's independent musical theatre podcast.
So I'm Cordelia O'Driscoll. I'm the composer and lyricist of You and I, and technically a musical director, playing the piano and the guitar in the band.
And I'm Tom, and I wrote the book for You and I.
Now, You and I is not a sequel to, but it is that difficult second album following Buried,
Yes.
which was your magnificent and hugely successful show of a few years ago, which has had quite a life here in Edinburgh and beyond, because I've seen it in London too, so you can claim you've had a world tour.
Yes.
So, but listeners will remember that we spoke, and I spoke very positively about Buried. It was a wonderful show. But tell us, how has that journey been for you? You know, I saw it, I think, quite early on in its life here at the Edinburgh Fringe, 3 years ago?
I think it was
2 years
2 years ago.
yeah.
That was the very early draft.
But it was very well received. It's been iterated and tweaked and twiddled and polished and buffed. And as I say, the version I saw, I think in the Pleasance, Islington, I think that's where I saw it, but I could be wrong, last year, was enhanced and slightly different. So I suppose I want to know is what has been the history of Buried before we talk about the all fantastic new show You and I.
Well, I mean, I guess so. We took it to the Fringe first time, which is where you saw it for the first time, which was a very surprising success for us. We sold out the whole run, and then from then on we did the Pleasance in Islington. We took it back to the Fringe, so the version you saw at the Pleasance we then developed quite a lot for the second Fringe again, and then most recently we actually took it to the New York Musical Festival in July, like a couple of weeks ago, really.
Yeah.
Oh, really? You're just freshly back in the country?
Yes, we really are. It's been a bit of a whirlwind. And
right.
We found out we won some awards from that as well. Last night we won
we won about 7 awards.
7 awards at the festival.
Only the 7?
Yeah.
It must be very disappointing.
Yeah, including Best Music and Best Book. So.
Yeah.
Well, I'm hardly surprised, actually, because there was the thing that attracted me to Buried so very much was the freshness and the originality and the voice with which you both speak. And I think that fusion together made a very coherent, enjoyable piece. And I'm pleased to say that's in You and I as well. There seems to be a Tom and Cordelia and Tom sound and feel. And long may that continue, by the way. But how was that development process for you? I mean, what was your original plan for Buried? Did you think it was only going to be that year at the Fringe, thank you very much, and then move on? Has it taken you by surprise that it's... Well, that ironically, the Buried has left you on top?
I think when we started off, I think we very much had the intention of bringing down the show just for the Fringe run, the Fringe experience. And when it did so well from that, and we won awards, and then we went to NSDF, I think that's maybe when we started
NSDF
to... Oh yeah, the National Student Drama Festival.
Thank you.
Yes, and I think we started to clock that people really enjoyed it, and then it was fun to develop. I mean, we got to go to the Czech Republic with it as well recently. We went to Brno to do a festival there, and I really do think each iteration just got visibly, noticeably better, especially from the feedback that we got. So I think it just sort of ran away with us a little bit, didn't it, in the best way? yeah, with us and everyone involved, really. It was amazing, and it was amazing to kind of cap it off by taking it to the New York Festival and get to do that with all the other cast built up with like Broadway performers, and then there's just us, like, and they won Best Ensemble as well. So Yeah, and of course our leading lady Lindsay Mannion, she won. I think she was a finalist for best lead performer.
Yeah,
really.
Yeah, up against Broadway actors, it's not bad, is it?
And she's back here.
Yes, she is. She's in You and I. Yeah,
she's giving of her all here.
Yes, exactly.
She certainly is.
So I just want to question that a little bit, because do you think that the New York performances are the final flowering, or is it now it's still got further life, or do you think now it's a baby on its own and actually other people can take it away and you can start dealing with your next shows, etc.? I
think from New York we're just trying to currently gauge. There's been interest in the show. We're just trying to work out what's best to do and also when it would be. It's definitely not the end of Buried in any way, but we're just trying to, because we'd love to get it back to New York. We had a really great response when it was there. It just depends like what is possible and when, really. But definitely not the end of it. We'd love to take it back to London and have a longer run in London as well.
Absolutely. It just depends what the interest is and what people want from it, I suppose, isn't it? If I think there is so many potential versions of it. There's like a Fringe version, like an hour long or an hour 15, and then there would be a sort of longer version. There'd probably be slight tweaks and changes for New York as well, where you kind of made these tiny little tweaks.
It's currently running at an hour and a half, I think, is what the New York one was, with no interval. But is there scope for it to be longer? Maybe, who knows?
Yeah.
Don't know.
Yeah.
So what were these tweaks? Do you mind me asking? Because I was actually going to ask you the question, how has it been received culturally in different countries? Because it's very British, isn't it? It's a very British piece.
Yeah, well, have you only you saw it in Pleasance was the last time you saw it? Well, from there we kind of altered Rose's storyline a bit from there.
Okay. That's the central female protagonist.
The female protagonist. We altered her storyline a little bit, and we also, for this most recent version, I wrote a new song for the TV psychopath TV. They have their own song towards the end of the show called "It's Still Love," which is a much more musical theatre kind of.
There's a kick line and everything.
So just
you've taken the Broadway.
Gone to the dark side. So that we added that in, and I think also just the performances of everyone developed so much, because I mean everyone involved just came straight from university, so everyone's untrained. So but grew up with the characters, I think. So really. I mean the version it was in New York was the best it's ever been. It was really.
We had the opportunity to work with the actors, and even though they've done it, hundreds of times, they were able to bring something new to it for the new crowd. There was just, it was, even subtle, but even the way, we would just rehearse it, the way you'd think about doing a scene would change. We'd just have fun turning it on its head for a bit. And
you do have to keep it fresh, don't you, as well?
Definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But Buried has both a past and, I think, a magnificent future. But let us talk about your new show, which I enjoyed immensely. You and I, would one or either or both of you, that's always interesting, try and have a crack at a spoiler-free description of the story?
You can do that. I'm rubbish at that.
So You and I is our new musical, and it's about a girl called Fran who...
Fran.
Yeah.
Who I suppose she leads quite an isolated, secluded life. She sort of suffers from anxiety, and then ends up one day having a robot delivered to her door. And I think that's spoiler free, because that is very much the selling point of the show. But
and when they got together, it was more that's a totally different story.
It's sort of just an adventure of her teaching the robot what it is to be a human and sort of get on in the world, and sort of learning things back from the robot from this new perspective. And I suppose that's probably all we can say, actually.
Yeah, I think that. Yeah, it's about regaining identity and then gaining identity in terms of the robot and her relationship. And it's really fun. It's quite silly, but it's also quite sad at points.
Oh, it's certainly touching. I think that's very clear. And in one or two very unexpected areas. I mean, you do pull off. I don't think I'm ruining anything when I say that. One is drawn very much to the personality of Robert the Robot, and obviously he has a journey. I'm using he. And Fran has a journey, and various people in the it's their journey between the two of them, isn't it? And they do. It's exactly that kind of thing of she's, as you said, she's isolated and self-isolated in a sense. So she's when I say dehumanise, that's a terribly strong word, but she has withdrawn. And therefore she's not outside of humanity, but she's very much on the fringes and not engaging. And of course he isn't of humanity, but of course made to look like humanity, which is a terrifying thing in some senses, and indeed a recognised terrifying thing in some cases. And of course he also is able to draw from her. So it's drawing the humanity from the inhuman, but not necessarily the inhumane, I suppose. That's that seems to be the balance, the tightrope you're walking. And I think you tackle it tremendously successfully. Also, and it has that same, to a degree, tonal feel of your previous show, and I think it's the fusion of your words and your music together actually make that work very well. But it's got that. It has the potential to be terribly earnest, that kind of let's all mutually learn. But I can assure you, I don't have to assure you, I'm assuring everyone else, but it absolutely isn't, because you have that liberal dose of not just the funny, but if I may say, there's the sense, it's like you stir in a big old spoon of absurd and then let the sincerity flow from that. And that sounds like that oughtn't to work in some senses, but that is exactly what happens, I think. It's ultimately, if you think about it, it's sort of, at this stage of human development, a very ridiculous thing. You couldn't actually accept it happening. And then the moment you accept it happening, this is a fantastically humane story. I think I keep coming back to the word humane, but I like it because that covers everything from emotional journeys and emotional responses to intellectual journeys and intellectual responses, and also that slightly greater thing that we are or aren't, depending on who we are. Oh, that's a terrible sentence, isn't it? But, that ineffable humanness. Gosh, I am talking trite this morning. So, how did you approach it? I mean, when did you realise there was going to be a second show? That your performance, your professional relationship as creators was so successful. I'm so delighted you've done it, but there must have been a moment of, oh, come on then, let's do another.
I think it was actually probably like around Christmas time.
This last year?
Because I think Colavoce Theatre,
your company,
wanted to go to Fringe and take something again, and I think we'd spoken about this idea. I actually can't remember when or how in depth, but I think that was when we were like, okay, we'll commit to this. So then we wrote it between, I don't know, like February and now, really.
Pretty much, up to the wire.
It was quite time pressured, not gonna lie, because we
go to New York.
We go to New York, and me and Tom were like self-producing it. Trying to raise all that money was an absolute nightmare.
That was tough.
So doing that all at once was insane, really. But we were slightly too optimistic. I mean, it all worked out. But
it all worked out. We've learned a lot. But I kind of always knew that I wanted to do another one. We just didn't know what it was going to be. But ever since Buried happened, I was like, we must try something new. That was great. But yeah.
I just like, you said something there a minute ago, Cordelia, which I thought was absolutely fascinating, and one of the things which is almost never mentioned in terms of actually manifesting creative ideas into something. You said commitment. Obviously people throw the word commitment around quite often, to the point where it's often sort of a throwaway, I got great commitment to this project or whatever, but actually you're quite right, you have to commit to a project to make it work. It's building your foundation stones. It just reminded me of something that happened to me 20 years ago when I was putting on a pantomime. It was a very, very much lower level thing than you, but I remember the person I was writing with said to me, I'm committing to this project, and that's when I knew that it was on, because in a sense this fellow had sort of bolted himself to the as the runaway mule, or however you would like to describe what your creative process is. But when I thought, oh well, that's very interesting, and you've just used it there as the very first thing, but really was you committed to the project. So you had these ideas, but somehow you said, right, we'll do it. And it's like things don't happen unless you put them in a diary. Socially, it's odd, isn't it? You have to it's the commitment that makes them happen.
Absolutely.
So you're both committed at Christmas, as it were, and have subsequently been committed by the sound of it in terms of the pressures you've been under.
Definitely.
So, I'm going to ask you again, have you found any changes in the way that you write together since Buried? I mean, is it now, how do you do it? Are you a fusion writing partnership in the sense that you like to be in the same room, or at least connected and constantly going back and forth? Or is it, here is the book, now put the songs in? Or is it, I've got these great ideas for songs, can the narrative drive its way there? Or, how do you do it?
I think because
and has it changed?
I think it has changed because because when we wrote Buried, we were at university, so we lived in the same place. But
proximity helps, doesn't it?
But then this time we didn't, so it was a bit more separate in terms of like meeting. It was much harder to be like, okay, we're gonna just, what are you doing tomorrow? We'll just sort that out. So it was much more kind of organised. And I guess in terms of the songwriting, we did that much more separately this time around. I wrote all the music and the lyrics, whereas if for Buried we did a lot more work in the room together.
I think so.
Just kind of like, because I guess because there was just no pressure on the project at all, it was just quite fun. Whereas this time, because we were more time pressured, it was like, well, we just got to get on with this.
Just got to do it.
There's no luxury of like being like just fun, jolly. It's like, right, we've got to write these songs. So,
and I think like certainly in this process, like you've had more of an input on the ideas and the writing of the book, because I've always kind of said that like Cordelia's been writing music for quite a long time, and that's one of the big reasons that I wanted to work with her in the first place, whereas I've sort of stepped into writing the book.
It just come up on you.
A little bit, and so like I've always had loads of support from Cordelia in that process, which is really, really useful. And it tends to be that I'll make something and bounce it off you, and then you'll kind of suggest edits, and then we'll kind of go through it together. So I think, you've probably had more of an input in the book, in the script this time around, certainly. And the way I look at your music is always like, I almost don't have feedback for it sometimes, because it is, I think, the centrepiece of the show. It's the best part about it. And like, I almost feel silly suggesting changes when I think what you do is so good. But I don't know. I think this process has made that quite clear, I think, to me, certainly this time around.
Well, that's very kind.
Do you recognise that?
Recognise what?
What Tommy's just been saying?
Well, I think, when I do send you music, you kind of just go like, I like it.
I love it.
So
it's always good feedback, though.
Good feedback. It's like, right, cool, okay.
But presumably you're both honest enough with each other, and this is a very essential thing in a successful relationship. So I'm merely saying it, I think, because it needs to be said, rather than because I'm questioning it. Which is that actually you've got to be honest enough to actually sometimes say, that song is fantastic, but actually, is it hitting the notes that we need? I'm talking narrative notes. Confusing life is. The narrative notes that we need to make this work, or vice versa. Actually marrying the. We could actually a dialogue change here will bring out or bring out echoes in a song that's also. You've got to go back and forth to change and be honest with each other, and that can be. Well, neither of you seem precious. In fact, you're both very generous with each other's work, it seems to me. So, which I think is also good. But I don't imagine there's any preciousness in there, but some people, some creative teams, quite often people who work on their own actually, maybe less teams, have
definitely.
that precious sense, and you think, oh well, you've got one draft and that's all you're ever going to get from it.
Yeah, you just waste your own time by doing that, I think. Like, I mean, I'm very self-critical and do a lot of reworking and redrafting, and also adding things in late, like the second song of the show, a robot called Robert and Me, that song, that I wrote that like 3 weeks ago maybe, because the scene itself, we were reading it, it's like, oh, we need another song, and it actually kind of really fit in here, so we kind of cut some of the scene, and then I just like added that in as like a reaction at the moment.
But did it incorporate some of the stuff that you removed? So was it an organic move from text to song?
There were pieces that were cut out of the original scene that are in the song for sure, like the idea about taking the battery out, and is that killing it?
That's
a good question, though, by the way.
Yeah. We don't get into that really, do we?
I think it was mainly like harnessing the tone of the scene as opposed to the actual words. So like it's like the reaction of what was going on, and like how I could like imagine what she'd sing about in that moment, because it's very much a reaction as opposed to like this is happening now and this is what's going to happen. It's just kind of a little bit like a what moment, big question mark for her.
And there was a certain beautiful staccato fluency just to the title of that song, by the way, a robot called Robot. A robot called, I can't say it, which is why you should never cast me. A robot called Robert and Me. It has that kind of Gilbertian pattery thing. But also the and me just says immediately nice sort of Me and My Shadow 1930s kind of songs. Great traditional musical history. I see your mind in there.
It's a fun song.
But I actually love the sound of that. There's a great deal of. It just trips, the songs and the dialogue trip lightly on the ear and sound absolutely naturalistic in what is essentially, as I say, an absurd situation. Let's get back to that element then. How between you have you managed to retain reality in an unrealistic environment? Discuss.
Good question.
I guess,
and there may not be a formal answer. You may never have sat down and actually say, let's do this. It may have just been, that is so obviously what one does, that one did it.
I think it's the same thing with Buried, in that like the even though they're serial killers, that they're being played by and as normal people. So I think it's the same thing. You're putting normal people in quite weird scenarios, which immediately grounds it because you can relate to them, as opposed to if you had. I remember some people saying about Buried, like, oh, maybe there should be like crazy, wacky serial killers, but then just being like, you just completely lose the entire tone of the show, which is that they are normal. And
they're hiding in plain view.
Yeah, exactly.
And exactly what they're doing.
Yeah, and I guess that's the same thing with this. You can kind of, you ground it in the kind of other relationships in the show with the different characters, and everyone's pretty normal, and people are quite boring in this show, to be honest. It's really normal people in comparison to
really
as in just like nothing like super exciting happens to any of them really. They're just quite normal people, so the robot coming in is just a bit of a like
it's a mixer-upper.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I think like the most interesting like way of telling these like weird stories is to bring out the absurdity of it, and then make the people within it as relatable as possible, so that the audience kind of it clicks, because that was the fun thing about doing Buried, is making people empathise with the serial killer.
Yeah, you were both marvellous for that. Unbelievable, but you did it.
That's very kind, thank you. And I think this came from a sort of similar idea of like I've found the idea of AI really fascinating for quite a while, and quite an urgent idea as well. And so
it's very zeitgeisty in that sense.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, we've had at least several tabloids bang on about how robots will kill us. So
yeah, absolutely. And I kind of wanted to take it away from that narrative as well, because it's all pictures of the Terminator in the newspaper, and actually like it's not that, but it's something coming in very soon, I think. And it's just a weird thing to think about, and to make the people in that scenario relatable to the audience is I think probably the most important thing in order to get them to comprehend the idea properly.
Well, I think it's, if I may make an observation, the first sort of flavours I got in the first sort of 10-15 minutes, once the sort of the plot had got itself going, was I was thinking, oh, this is very clever. Well, this is very clever, but what I mean is I was thinking that not everyone, I do not, but a lot of people have an Alexa or something like that in their living room. They do essentially have an inert, in this case, robot, which serves. And I've always disliked the idea, and the reason I dislike the idea, funnily enough, is this disconnect between what you're asking it to do, which is an entirely human power structure, and its ability to decline to do that, which is none. And I suppose what I'm pandering, or what I'm sort of tippy-toeing towards here is actually, I've got friends who've got it, and they'll just say, Alexa, turn on the radio, or whatever it is. And they don't say please or thank you. And of course I fully understand why they don't say please or thank you, because why would you to an automaton or whatever it is? And yet you would if you were asking a waiter to do that for you, or someone else. A human. There may be a power difference, but you are asking to do it. And I was thinking, well, that's very interesting, because Robert is in a sense an Alexa with legs.
Yes,
and he's rather more than that. But that issue is here, and actually when it seems so stupid, because they are made to sound human or look human, when does it become, and I don't want to waste the word slavery here, but the relationship is one of a master and a slave, and not of someone who at least could walk, I'm going to use the waiter again, a waiter could walk away from their job if they wanted to. I suspect I'm being very heavy-handed and poor in my phraseology here, but you sort of you understand that, and but I find that's a very small issue of today, and almost nobody cares. But it's just one of an exemplar of the kind of issues which we're going to have to face as a society. And so you've sort of addressed that head on with a big old spoon of comedy, I suppose. Ladle, possibly.
Yeah.
I don't think what you're saying is that unreasonable, because
why, thank you, my lord.
Although it feels like it's in the future in this weird thing. I mean, it's already, you can see like kids born, in the past few years are now growing up with this sort of presence, and it does slightly warp your perception of reality. I mean, I remember hearing on a podcast this person asking the kids how many women are there in the house, and they said Alexa and Siri, so 2. And they said, what about your mum? And so there's this change in mindset, and it's very subtle and it's very creeping, but I think there's stuff to think about there, which is new and alien. And
do you know, I hadn't even stopped to think why they're all female voices as well. That's terrible, actually, as we are making them subservient. Oh gosh, that's all right. That's ruined my day. I'll have to go off and chew on that one. Right. Yeah. Well, I won't have one in the house. I'd actually like to explore the performances a little bit, because I think it would be remiss not to touch upon them. Now, as you say, we have much of a returning cast, actually, don't we? Original Berry cast.
A couple of fan favourites.
Yeah. Oh, indeed. Well, shall we talk about them?
Yeah, so we've got Lindsay Mannion.
Who is that, Fran?
Who was playing Fran, and she played Rose in Buried.
Very different characters.
Yeah, I mean, couldn't really be more different. So she's doing incredibly well, and as is Lawrence Hunt, who was a chorus member in Buried and did lots of incredible impressions.
Yeah,
I still chuckle at Kermit the Frog. I must
say. He's unrivaled in his voice control and impressions.
Well, and the voice is so important, isn't it? That performance, it is. I am the authoritarian voice, as you might hear on the television. Fran. It's that kind of thing. Although then there's this, I won't ruin it, but there's enough subtlety in the performance that can change when it's necessary to do so, and it brings you up short marvellous.
It's brilliant. I mean, and they've done so well, because obviously they were in New York with us doing Buried, and then we had a very short, under 2-week rehearsal period to get this on its feet, which included them learning all of the music, all of their lines, forgetting everything about Buried, particularly Lindsay, forgetting everything about that character she developed for like 2 years and doing something completely different. And I mean, props to them, because and the rest of the cast as well, who just really took everything head on and just learnt it all, and absolutely smashing it now.
Incredible,
because it was so quick.
Well, I'm seeing it I've seen it right at the beginning of this year's Fringe.
Yes.
And yes, I didn't see a drop moment, so everything was fantastic.
Yeah, everyone is absolutely incredible.
And we've got returning band members as well.
Yes.
We've got Fraser Friendly and Ben Evans, who are 2 Buried favourites who are coming
back. Fraser played the viola last year in Buried, and you wouldn't have seen him if people see people saw Buried in Edinburgh, you wouldn't have seen him because there were too many of us on stage, and he was actually in the wing. And then
you might have seen his bowing.
Might have seen his bowing, yeah. And then Ben Evans, who's played bass in all of Buried and everything Colin Botcher's ever done.
Yeah.
Two absolute legends who I co-orchestrated everything with them. We just did it kind of live like a band, which was really good fun actually.
And gives it that spontaneous feel as well. It's so it doesn't feel like a chamber piece or a chamber opera.
Yes.
It does actually feel like a real life environment.
Yeah.
So that's and the seamlessness of the narrative into music as well also helps with that kind of flow. That's there's no jarring moments, there's no handbrake turns. I've seen one or two really great musicals this year, but one was it was an excellent idea, very beautifully done. I'm not going to name it, but very clunky. So someone just needed to do a little polish on that, and I wouldn't say that, which is not to say that I know you are going to polish it. Of course, it will develop and blah blah blah, all the usual things. But even in this very early stage, I think it's a cracker. I think it's a genuinely great show.
I think a big reason for that is because we've worked with the director this year, Ellen Schofield, and so obviously when we did Buried, we kind of just shared jobs between us, and we both kind of directed and assistant directed. Whereas we've got Ellen in for this, and she's like just so good. She's so good. She's given it this, as you say, this polish to it, which we just didn't have with our first year here at Buried, because she's just thinking in a whole new way. It's really great.
It's next to sheen, isn't it, in the sense of sort of buffing up something. A director is a really useful thing to
and just kind of having someone at the helm with like a kind of vision about the show. It just we'd be lost without Ellen Schofield. Name check, hire her. She's the best.
They help chew through gristle as well sometimes, don't they?
Yeah.
We've got an issue here, but we could move that. There are stagecraft ways of dealing with problems as well.
Also, she's a movement director as well and a dancer, so it brings a bit of flair to kind of different movements, and really helped with Lawrence's movement.
Movement is important in this. Yeah. Let us remark upon that.
Certainly is. Yeah.
Yeah, playing a robot, it's quite tricky, but
Well, can I ask a question though? I don't want to expose any great trade secrets, but I watched it with 3 other people, all of whom loved it. But I asked them afterwards, and I said, when for most of Robert's sort of stage career, shall we say, he does something which is, because he obviously is played by a human actor, so he looks like a human, even though he's in a kind of tracksuit, which sort of just marks him out as slightly odd. But he doesn't make eye contact with anyone in the piece, or so it appeared to me as an audience watching, and that is very unhuman. So he mimics, but he's at no I'm doing it now on the radio, but you can look at people's foreheads, and it's really, we've all met people who won't look you in the eye, and they will talk to your head, and you think, no, I'm here. Just 2 inches down, please. And he does that, and he's also sort of never quite making focus. Into the audience as well. So we got that sense, or at least I think we did. My friends didn't spot it, but they felt it, which I thought that's quite remarkable.
That is interesting.
And so there's lots of little, and not everyone noticed that in there's a scene where they're in a much more social environment and people are drinking. And he has a pint of water, and which he lifts in the mimicking of the human environment to his mouth, where it lingers for 2 centimetres away from the mouth and then comes back down all the way through. And once again, people didn't spot that per se, but they got something wasn't right. And that I find very interesting, that people aren't getting necessarily the detail, or because they're engaged in the plot or watching other things. But those little tiny moments added together collectively make a fantastic character.
Lawrence is a very detailed performer. Exactly.
I mean, that is now I live by that.
Lawrence takes things very seriously in that regard, so was always looking to add in more things to make the performance more detailed. Like, I don't know if you noticed the way he blinks, but it's very slow, like very consistently throughout the show. He just
I didn't spot that.
He's very
he's a very thoughtful actor.
Very thoughtful,
and he will pay attention to the fine details consistently throughout.
So this sounds like an oxymoron, but it's an engaging alienation that he's managed to discover.
Absolutely.
That's a good word.
Very impressive. I mean, everyone involved, they've just kind of really gone for it with the characterization, and I think also because the rehearsal period was incredibly immersive. We rehearsed and stayed in the same place with each other for it was about 10, 11, 12 days or whatever it was, and it just meant that everyone got really immersed in the story, got to know everyone really well, so there's a great chemistry amongst the whole cast.
Yes, bonhomie comes across, actually. I think that's good. Also, there's a marvellous one of your other characters just has a brief, what I can only call a Julie Walters moment with a potted cactus.
Yes.
It's like watching Mrs. Overall come in.
Yeah. That
Oh, yes.
Cara Withers. Yeah, she is.
Yeah.
She's amazing. She's done a lot of clowning before, and she's absolutely hilarious. Yeah, she
But
got
very
name
physical
checked
again.
in
Oh, did
British
she?
theatre for being a young Julie Walters. Yeah.
Well, it's not a bad thing to have on the old CV.
Yeah,
Absolutely
definitely
not.
not. Put that on the poster.
But there's
yeah.
not a dropped ball in the performance, if I may say. And it's interesting you were saying that they asked, the characters are on the whole quite average. Ian is a very average character, and yet he's a beautifully understated catalyst in a way, isn't he?
Oh, completely, yeah.
But he's not the, hello everybody, I'm your comedy neighbour. Because he's
No.
not that at all. He's actually, hello, I've just moved in and
Yeah.
sort of looking for friends and here you are, and it's that kind of thing. And once it all feels right. And I suppose that takes us back to the earlier thing I was saying, how do you make this strangely odd, absurd play feel realistic? It's in the writing, it's in the music, but it's in the performances as
Yeah,
well.
definitely the performances. Everyone's very natural, and
And it also comes down to the idea that I think when we started out, we didn't want to create jazz hands musicals, and so I think you get that in dialogue and book as well as music. And I think everything we can do to bring it down to earth, I think resonates with what we're trying to do, which is make people who aren't normally into musical theatre interested in it.
Yeah.
And actually, funny enough, you also portray people who are not normally in musical theatre. Both your shows, in some senses.
Yeah.
Those aren't archetypes, are they?
No, they're not. Yeah, I guess not. Yeah.
I can't think of a robot musical, I guess.
Well, you couldn't call this electronically blonde. Or,
No,
Yeah.
sure.
I often ask this question. I know it's a reductive question, but what's your favourite moment or song in the piece? And the reason I ask is because actually I think it quite often shines a light on the people who are being asked, which is you too.
Yeah.
Just reminding you.
Yeah.
But I really love the karaoke sequence in the show. I really like that. It's really fun, and I like how it kind of jumps between songs and then like the song that Fran is singing. It was just when we put that on its feet, it was just so much fun, and it's also quite unexpected. That whole sequence is quite tight. I really like that bit.
I agree. I would say it's my favourite too. Partly because when I saw it in my head when we were writing it, it was it was meant to be funny. And then when I saw it performed on its feet, I was actually quite moved by part of it, and I was like, "Oh, that was quite an unexpected element to come out of it."
Yeah.
So
That's exactly what I was going to say. It is. I think that is actually the apotheosis of the humanity in the piece. If I can sound pretentious from it, and I know I can. So, but as you say, it's laced with enough fun because it's a fun. They're portraying a fun thing.
Yeah.
It is that great social moment in the piece, and it's full of people, and that just generates a sense of humanity. And even Robert's involvement in it, in fact, is you feel, if you like, is a moment of epiphany. Isn't the right word? It is apotheosis, isn't it? I think that's when he is able to draw from his environment what we as humans can do naturally. Is that, without explaining anything. It's just it is an important plot moment as well.
Yeah, definitely.
But done in such a fun environment, and also you've got as you say the two, they're flatmates, aren't they? They're not very nice flatmates. I wouldn't want to live with them, but they're squabbling over the karaoke, and you get actually that's what friends do. They get one too many drinks inside and they want to show off or not show off or get dragged to the microphone or don't get dragged to the microphone, whatever.
Yeah.
So you've got that general atmosphere going on as well. You're very good at creating atmospheres actually, and then sometimes just stringing them out in a good way. Actually, I think once again that comes from the music and the writing. But actually, you can give us something, and then you pull a thread out, and actually then you pull that thread out as far as it will go, helping to. I know pulling threads doesn't shed light, but if you work with me here, I can. But you get the dramatic. You draw as much dramatic tension, even if it doesn't feel like tension, out of the piece.
Yeah.
I think it's marvellous. I love what you write, and I love the way you do it.
Thank you very much.
So, where next? Or we're right at the beginning of the Fringe this year. How audience is taking it before we go on to the next thing then?
Really well, seemingly. Really, really lovely responses. We've had the audiences are picking up in quantity, or amount. There's more people in the room.
If you like.
I don't know.
You're moving towards that great sellout moment. Yes.
Hopefully, because I think with Buried both years, we've come there with a pretty finished product. So we've had like all 18 people on the mile from the start. Whereas with this, we've been so pushed for time, we've had to be rehearsing in the day. Yeah. But from the last couple of days, we've actually been able to be on the mile in full effect and everyone flying. So I think, and that's really helped. Like we had 120, 30 people in yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So we're hoping to get up to.
And I should say, yesterday was Monday. And Monday, the first Monday of the Fringe is traditionally a lower day.
Yes. So hopefully.
Yeah, it's been on the up.
Yeah, we're going on the up. Hopefully. So no, it's and really we've had all the audiences be very vocal, laughing a lot, audibly crying.
Really?
which is always quite funny.
Yeah, we've had some snifflers.
And obviously very lovely, but it is quite because of the lights. Like I'm on stage, I can't see anyone in the audience, and then like in the kind of quiet, sad moments, I can just hear people going like. Which is quite funny.
The watermark
but very well appreciated. Thank you for coming and playing. If you liked it and found it sad. Sorry.
But isn't that actually the most wonderful validation?
I think for someone to be like genuinely moved by it is really amazing. Because I think the performances from the guys in the gang are just phenomenal, and like the way that Lindsay holds the show together with her like central performance and connects to characters is really, really phenomenal, particularly in such a short amount of time. So I'm sure it will develop hugely over the time we're here.
I'm certain.
They've had no time, so it's going to be really exciting to see.
And what are your hopes for it? Buried 2 in that sense, world tour.
I mean, it'd be amazing to do more with it. I think it's been such a rush that we'd love to. Obviously, we were expecting a Tony Award.
When they
7,
deliver
I believe,
that.
is the number you want.
Probably a Grammy or something. I'm sure. Just more. I think we want to get back in the room and do some work on it with everybody, develop it.
Tour it. That'd be good.
Just kind of get more shows of it, really.
I also found that when we took Buried back to the Fringe for the second time, it was so useful in getting it in a really good place, and like it was so useful for developing it. It changed so much between the years, so I'd love for it to have that same kind of trajectory.
So the development arc could be similar.
Potentially, I
feel
at least
we'd end up with something really good. Like
even better, I think, is what.
Thank you. But we'll see. We'll see.
Cordelia
and Tom, outside of this work, what are you doing, if you don't mind me asking? Do you work on separate projects?
I'm a barista, working in a cafe. I'm a singer-songwriter as well. So,
exactly.
But I have, because we've been so busy with Buried and doing this, that's really taken a back seat. It's just fun, really. But
your creative outpourings are all in this direction.
And also I'm a photographer as well.
Goodness me!
If anyone wants some snaps, I've got a website.
When exactly did you last sleep?
I don't know. I can't remember. Not really sure, but just various things. I need to try and focus my time, I guess. I don't know.
Do all of the things.
All the things forever. Great.
Yeah. Well, I've been working on another show with a friend of mine, Kurum Dio, and it's like a piece of stand-up essentially, and he's written it, and I've basically sat in a room and told him how funny he is for a really long time because he's
no friend can
brilliant.
do more.
But no, he's brilliant, and this is his first sort of outing in the world of stand-up, and it's a lovely show. I think it's very sort of like heartwarming and sweet, and. But in my day job, I'm working with Make-A-Wish Foundation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which is really nice. So I've got the job of wish granter, which is delightful. A lovely job to do, and it's nice. It's flexible. It helps with working
real life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So your company, of course, a very successful company, is Collar Voce Theatre, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how can people keep in touch with what you're doing now and in the future, and the two of you, if you don't mind me asking?
So with Collar Voce, they can keep in touch via Twitter, Facebook. It's Collar Voce Chef, I think, on everyef.
Do you want to spell that?
Yeah, I was about to. Yeah, probably should. COLLAVOCESHEF. on.
You made that really easy for them.
Yeah, just in case people were worried.
You gotta want it.
And then we have a joint Twitter, which is WillowDriskMT, WILLODRISCMT.
I can see why you developed artificial intelligence.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and then
before you speak to us, you might swipe me to the hit of acid.
Yeah, and then I made a Twitter last night because apparently everyone's supposed to have a professional Twitter.
Apparently.
Yeah, so mine is Cordelia O'Disco because O'Driscoll doesn't fit.
Great name though.
Yeah, so Cordelia.
It's a great drag name as
ODISCO. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe I'll do that as well. So that's
yeah, just add that to the list of things.
Maybe I'll just get another website. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's kind of how they can keep in contact, really.
Yeah.
And yeah, if people come to the show, there's like a little program that has
Yes.
personal Twitters of the cast and stuff.
And congratulations on that. You know, actually, the people I was with really appreciated that.
Yeah.
Because people like knowing what they're seeing and who they're seeing.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
as you say, afterwards, it reminds people. It sits there on the shelf or in their pocket, and they think, like, "Oh, I really enjoyed that."
Yeah.
And I'll tweet about it or whatever.
Yeah, it's really helpful because also I see shows and I think, oh god, I don't know anything about it. Who's involved?
Yeah.
I'd love to say something, but there's nothing to know to contact anyone. But we've got programs. So come along. You can get one for free.
Come on down.
Yeah.
Well, Cordelia and Tom, this is starting to feel like a tradition, or possibly two traditions. The most important tradition is that you have always got a brilliant show and you bring it to Edinburgh. So please do continue with that. You and I is a great show. It's a 5-star show. It's touching, it's funny, it's hilarious. It's pretty much everything I want.
Thank
Indeed
you.
it was. And I hope there's going to be many more fruits of your tree, as it were, in the future. But good luck with this as it develops.
Thank
you so much.
And I hope to see you around the country, and certainly here, as it develops.
Yeah, thank you so much.
That'd be lovely. That's very kind. Thank you.
Musical Talk. Well, there we are. That was Cordelia O'Driscoll and Tom Williams. And two nicer or more talented people you'll have to go a long way to find. They've been massively successful, but they remain tremendously modest. Now, as I said, I loved every second of You and I genuinely hope that it's going to go further and that I'll have a chance to see it again and to hear it again. Now, it would be remiss of me if I didn't pay tribute to Lindsay Mannion, who plays Fran, and also Lawrence Hunt, who was Robert, and was able to do that thing I always find so fabulous, find humanity in a non-human environment, and to find ways of touching you whilst offering you laughs aplenty in a tremendously studied performance. It was a masterclass, really. I hope you'll want to find out more. If you want to find out more about Buried the Musical, you can. It has a dedicated website, which you can find at, get this, buriedthemusical.co.uk. And of course there is the umbrella organisation Collar Voce Theatre, and you can go to their website to find out more about Buried and also You and I, and indeed other shows that they've been responsible for. And the website for that is collarvocetheatre.co.uk. And I'm going to spell that. COLLAVOCE and then theatre, THEATRE.co.uk. You and I was Musical Talk's Pick of the Fringe 2019. And Cordelia O'Driscoll and Tom Williams are definitely people to watch. And by watching, I mean both them and their careers, but also every production they're responsible for. Marvellous stuff. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is time on this episode of Musical Talk. Do join us again next week when we'll be talking about something completely different. You know the drill by now. After all, later this year we're hoping to reach our 700th episode. So if you've been with us for even a little bit of that time, you'll know how Musical Talk works. Something for everybody, eventually. So, what's the best way of ending this episode? Well, I usually finish with the word goodbye. Maybe it's time to turn things around. Bye, good. Not sure that works. This episode of Musical Talk edited and presented by Thos Ribbits. Copyright Musical Talk 2020. To find out more about the world of Musical Talk and listen to past episodes, go along to our website www.musicaltalk.co.uk or subscribe to us on iTunes and follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And if you want to follow me on Twitter, you can at MusicalTalk Thos. So we've got about 45 minutes. Is that all right for you two?
Yeah, absolutely.
Lovely, thank you. Do you mind giving me a very, very quick level then? What did you have for breakfast?
Nothing.
Anxiety.
Some water.
Yeah.
Oh, that is light.
Yeah.
Nothing to eat.
Oh Lord, I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
No.
Torture upon torture.
It's very much the Fringe way, I think, isn't it? Just up and out and
something inappropriate at the wrong time with bad calories.
Yeah.
Well, that looks sort of fat. I'll have that. That'll keep me going until the next time I find 2 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, lovely. Well, what I'd like to do, just do exactly the same way that we did it last time. If you could both introduce yourselves and the name of the show and your involvement, and then it will just be the conversation. This is probably all going to sound tremendously familiar because I haven't changed anything. I will be wanting, if that's okay, to talk upon the success of Buried and where that's taken you.
Sure.
And then you and I.
Yeah.
Sure. Obviously, we'll concentrate on you and I. There's an episode out on Tuesday. 5 minutes of this conversation will go out on that because that will be the shows you can still see. Go to see them, and then the full episode will go out in the fullness of time, as they say, in local government terms. Yes, at the appropriate juncture. So, who would like to go first? Go on, people. You had water for breakfast. You're full. Full of energy. Are you both happy with that as a conversation? That's marvellous as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no
you
worries.
are such lovely people. Thank you. You give so much.
Thank
It's very
you.
nice and it's interesting.
Thank
So
you.
I'm going to turn it off.